Hello, my name is Ridwan and I'm going to analyze this book called The Absolutely True Diary of a Part-Time Indian. The book was written by Sherman Alexie and was published in 2007. Sherman is an award-winning author and a poet and a filmmaker. And just like himself, this book has also won a whole lot of awards and have become a multiple bestseller. This book is about a boy called Arnold and his life as a Native American who lives in a reservation and all the poverty in it. Inspired by his own life growing up, Sherman wrote about this unlucky boy who was trying to get out of this box that people had put him in and live the life he wants and hopefully find himself while doing so. Okay, now let's move on to the plot. This book is about a boy called Arnold, as I mentioned earlier, and he was born with water in his brain, and not only that, he had about 42 teeth along with big hands and big feet. That was the reason why he was bullied, because he was different than the others. Arnold lives in a Spokane Indian reservation in Welpine, and Arnold was poor along with his family, his friends, and everyone around him in the reservation. Arnold did not have an easy life while he was growing up. Let's talk about themes. This book has many themes. And the whole book is about bullying, identity, race, friendship, family, loss, and mostly poverty. Let's start with identity. Arnold has identity crisis and I feel like he has identity crisis because he struggles a lot with who he is. Arnold has been this outcast his whole life, and he started to live more of a normal teen life after he started in this white-dominated school in Renton. He felt more accepted he's felt more accepted than he has ever been, and he went from nothing to something in Renton. He also talks a lot about being half white and half native, and that is one of the reasons I think he has identity crisis, because that's kind of suspicious. Anyways, let's move on to bullying. Even though he started to live his normal teen life that he struggled a lot with bullying when he was living full-time in the reservation. He was born with multiple complications with his brain, as I may have mentioned earlier, and because of that he was mocked and bullied. People hit him in the head and beat him up when they saw him in the streets. If you read chapter about Halloween, you will see that people just beat him up because he was walking down the street and stuff like that. If you read the book, then you will see how much Arnold talks about his family and friends. And therefore, I know this book has family and friends as one of its important themes. Maybe because he has this feeling of emptiness and loneliness. So he longs for family affection and thinks a lot about friendship, and because of that, he did not have many friends, many of them. Let's move on to loss. Loss is also one of the themes that were in the book. Arnold lost a lot of family and relatives. They were either killed by drunk people or they overdosed with alcohol, especially when alcoholism is central in reservations in America. Conflict. Arnold, who is the main character of the book, went through a lot of stuff. He lost some family members and was bullied most of his life, and only a few times did he fight back. One time he threw a book at his teacher because he was mad about the fact that they were using the same book as his mother used when she went to high school. Another conflict that I could see is that Arnold was fighting to convince others that he's normal, that he could do what others could do. Especially when others in the reservations did not accept him for who he is and bullied him for who he is and how he looked. Therefore, Arnold struggled a lot with finding acceptance, and I think that is a conflict. Let's talk about the climax now. The climax in the book was when he came back to his old school and played a basketball game against them. They were the best basketball team in their states. Arnold was not only playing a game against his old school, but also his best friend. This game was the final game and was going to decide who was going to the finals and play against other states. This chapter was very nerve-wracking and exciting. When the game ended, Arnold realized that he was not David from David and Goliath, but rather Goliath. The reason is because the kids from the reservation had less than the kids from Rendon, and therefore he was not some hero who was trying to save, but rather a villain who was trying to destroy something. Settings. This book has 2 settings. One of the settings is Rendon, and that's where his new school is located, and the reservation is the other setting. Rendon is a town who is lived by white people and is about 22 miles away from Welpene, which is where the reservation is located. The reservation is where Arnold grew up, and that's his home, and when he's not in his home, that the Rendon is his home. Let's move on to point of view. This book is narrated from Arnold's point of view, meaning we see the book from Arnold's eyes. This point of view is called the first person, so we are reading from the I person's view. Therefore, we can read all the dialogues that Arnold has with people he meets, and also we can hear his thoughts. Let's move on to characters. This book has many characters. One of these characters are called Arnold, which is of course the main character. We also have other B characters like Roddy, his best friend, his parents, Mr. Spirit and Mrs. Spirit, and his grandma Spirit. There's also his sister Mary Spirit and his dad's best friend Ian. I really don't know how to say his name. The other B characters that came into the picture later is Gordy, who became a good friend of Arnold's, along with Roger and his Sammy girlfriend Penelope. The coach played a huge role in his character development. Because of him, he became stronger mentally and gained a lot of confidence to actually live a better life. Now let's talk about the environment. Poverty is a huge part of the environment in this book. Arnold lives in a reservation, as you may have heard from me earlier, and poverty is something everyone in the reservation struggles with. Therefore, Arnold grew up appreciating everything he has and everything around him. Bullying and toxic environment is also something I have taken notice of. In the book, Arnold was bullied just for living and walking down the street. He was bullied because of his brain damage and the way he looked. I also read somewhere in the book that those who were bullying him and beating him up were grown-up adults, like 30 years old adults. I mean, like, why would they do that? And do they not have heart? Like, that's a kid. Now I'm going to talk about the ending of the book and conclude with it. Even though this book has been a roller coaster, it had a peaceful ending. The book ended with Roddy and Arnold becoming friends again. They talked and laughed together while Roddy talked about how the Native Americans used to be nomadic, and the fact that Arnold is kind of nomadic because he will move from place to place. They told each other stories about the tribe and the nature around them. And they also climbed the highest pine tree in their land. Roddy also understood the reason why Arnold chose to change school and accepted him for who he is now. Arnold also accepted himself and who he has become now and who he is, The fact that people really care about him and he's not alone in this world.